Okay, everybody. I want to welcome you all to our webinar this morning, this afternoon, this evening, wherever you are in the world as you are tuned in. The topic of today's session will be the Dorothy approach to strategic networking. And our featured speaker of the day is Miss Susan Lucas-Conwell. She'll be delivering today's session for you. Just want to start off by personally thanking the IEEE Women in Engineering International Leadership Conference for giving myself, David Stankiewicz, and Susan the opportunity to be part of the virtual portion of this fantastic. Before I do get started and kick it over to Susan, I just want to go over a few housekeeping items, and I'll also let the audience know out there how you can participate in today's, what we hope will be an interactive session. So if you've joined today's webinar listening through your computer's speaker system, also known as VoIP or voice over IP, this means that you will be able to hear the entire presentation without dialing in using your telephone. At the end of Susan's presentation, she's going to leave about 15 to 20 minutes to take questions from you out there in the audience, and there is two ways that you can actually ask a question of Susan. So you can actually use the WebEx chat feature built right within this tool. Just simply type in your question to myself, the host, David Stankiewicz, and click the send button. You can also join the conversation on Twitter. We have a hashtag for this event. It's hashtag WeLead. That's WIELEAD. And you can tweet your question using that hashtag. We will monitor Twitter throughout the conversation as well. Just want to finally remind everybody that we are going to record today's presentation. So if you missed any portion of Susan's session, or you would just simply like to rewatch it, you can visit the IEEE Women in Engineering YouTube channel and watch it on demand. So with that said, and without further ado, Miss Susan Lucas-Conwell.
Thank you, David, and welcome to everyone. It's interesting doing strategic networking and talking about it when none of us can see each other. So I hope you're all sitting in a place where you're focused and concentrated and you're pretending that I'm right in front of you and then David's next to me, making sure that I behave myself. So I'd like to go through this presentation because one of the things that we forget about is how important it is to do networking and to really do networking, not just hang out and chit-chat with your friends. If we back up for a second and ask ourselves what networking is, it can be defined as cultivating productive relationships for employment or for business. And it is a critical practice to optimize your networks, then your advisors, and then whoever else you're working with. Otherwise, you're not going to be ready when those opportunities come to you. That's why I call it critical practices to optimize network intelligence. That's also a theme that I'll mention a little later, which is the topic of Reid Hoffman's recent book on networking intelligence. So, sorry, just one second here. Why do I call it the Dorothy approach? Because if you think about it, Dorothy from The Wizard of Oz is probably the most successful networker that I can think of. For those of you who aren't American or who don't know The Wizard of Oz, we're looking at an image of Dorothy and her dog Toto. It's a great movie. It's a great story. It's a great book. Dorothy was a girl from Kansas whose house blew off the planet Earth. She landed in the middle of a foreign land. She didn't even know where she was, who was who, or what was what. And all she had was her little dog Toto to help guide her to where she hoped she would get, which was back home. Thanks to a yellow brick road, a lion, a scarecrow, and a tin man, a lot of networking, a bit of common sense, an awful lot of paying it forward, she succeeds, and she gets herself home in the blink of an eye. So that's probably the best networking story I can think of. Now you're probably thinking, why is she going from Dorothy to rowing? Because sports are very much like networking, or you could say networking is a sport. The more you practice, the better you become. It's multidimensional, it's multidirectional. Rowing, in particular, takes practice, it takes technique, it takes dedication and laser focus. And it also takes not just doing the little things, it takes doing the right things. And so does networking. You have to commit to your finish line, you have to commit to your fellow rowers, and you have to be completely in sync or you don't win. If we break down strategic networking into different parts, we're going to look at and talk through the brand, the message, the market, and implementation. So for those of you who are thinking right now, oh my God, this means I have to go into this huge room. Maybe I'm already going to the Women in Leadership Conference in the next couple of days, or maybe I'm not, and I have to deal with these hundreds of people. What am I going to do? I can't spend the whole day in the bathroom. Well, you could, but that wouldn't be a very successful networking story. So what I'm trying to do is break it down into its components. So you have action items and things you can do, and then you can think about it strategically as well. Before we go into each of these topics, I have something that is a very important action item that you're going to have to do. It's not going to be fun and it's not going to be pretty, but it's your starting point. And your starting point is your own address book, whether it is a little leather address book, a Gmail address book, a contact list, a CRM that you're using out there. You need, before you start, to go through that address book, and you need to clean out or put into a different address book that you only rarely look at anyone you have not talked to or communicated with in the last 6 months. Now, if you're talking about a long-lost cousin, that's different. Personal contacts, people who, you're a yoga instructor, okay, yoga instructor can stay in there. Hopefully you've been to yoga more recently in the past 6 months. But whatever those contacts are, if your address book isn't clean and thoughtful and organized, and you know who each of those people are, so even if somebody went into your address book 60 days ago, if you can't remember who they are, delete. Then go into that little drawer and those coat pockets and that little pocket in your purse where you kept those business cards from the last event you went to. If those cards have not gone into your address book, if you don't know who they are, if you don't know why you took their cards, and that situation has lasted more than 10 days, get rid of those cards. By the time you finish this exercise, you already have the beginning of a strategic network that is going to be meaningful and hopefully aligned with your objective. Let's start with your brand, which is the brand. Think about who you are, what your skills, your values, and preferences are, what your strengths are. You don't have to write them down, but you do need to focus on them because this is all about what you're going to be communicating and projecting. Dorothy communicated that she was a little girl whose house had blown off of the planet Earth and she wanted to get back home to Kansas. What is it? What's your Kansas? What's your goal? Where do you want to go? And then think about your objective. So what do you want? Worst case, when you reach out for the moon, you'll hit a few stars along the way. It's better than not going somewhere. And if you don't have a goal and you don't have an ambition, it's pretty sure you're going to be nowhere near the stars. That ambition, those objectives, they could be very short term, what you need to do in the next 90 days or the next 30 days, or they could be much more long term. Make sure before you go out on the networking stage that you're clear about what it is that you want and what the timeline for that it is, and then what your priorities are. Sometimes the timelines and the priorities are connected to one ambition or one objective, and sometimes they're interconnected. So you could be thinking about wanting to change industries, and when you change industries, move into a management position or move into a senior position. You could say, so I'm going to spend the next 90 days learning all I need to know about the new industry, making some key contacts in that industry who I can then interview informationally before I make my jump. So there's a piece of that in your networking that's going to be, so I'm going to go to a certain set of events because they're going to help me learn, and so I'm getting content, and then I'm also making connections. And then there are others where I want to be projecting. And so those might be events that are more focused on management in that industry. Thinking about one step at a time, which step, which priority, what timeline is very important. Don't forget that you need to promote and manage your brand, and part of that includes paying it forward. That always comes back to you. We talked about sports, and we talked about the web being multi-directional. So that's very much about not just thinking about yourself, but paying it forward. If we go back to Dorothy, she didn't slay dragons, but she certainly spent a lot of time helping the Scarecrow and the Tin Man and any number of unusual characters that she met along her way. And if she hadn't done that, well, it wouldn't have come back to her as well. So in this multidimensional brand and world, you need to be thinking constantly not just about yourself and managing yourself, but also about, as you go along, how you're going to be who you are and how it will come back to you. And this is true and should be true for everyone. Paying it forward is no exception. This is an image of Cassius Clay in 1963. We know him as Muhammad Ali, probably one of the most well-known boxers, and even in 1963, a global winner. And he talked about how the fight is won or lost far away from the witnesses, behind the lines, in the gym, out there on the road. So this goes back to the notion of practicing and practicing and practicing before you ever get on stage. And this photo is a photo of him after a fight with Patrick Power, 6 years old. He's helping to teach him to defend himself against bullies. Did he ever need to do this? Absolutely not. Who knows what Patrick Power ever did to help Muhammad Ali, but isn't it wonderful to think that we all have something that we can give and pay forward, and it will help us in one way, shape, or form. We just don't know what that looks like. So now let's talk about the message. You figured out who you are and where you're going, and you've probably got a couple priorities and timelines lined up in your head and some objectives. That's great. You also will have cleaned up that address book. So it is your first tool. It's your starting point. You can't go out for a run without great shoes. So now let's look at your pitch. Your pitch is going to be what you need to say and what you need to project when you go out into a networking situation. When you are thinking, I am going here because I want to achieve and I want to talk to. So there are all kinds of situations that require these skills. There's form and function. Think about what this is going to look like, when you're going to pitch this message, how, where, and to whom. It has to be about your inner self. It has to be true, and it has to be relevant. It is not good enough to go to a cocktail party and talk about, well, you could warm the subject up and talk about the Golden State Warriors, but really what you want to be doing is talking about yourself and where you want to be. You also, at all times, want to be listening. Remember the notion of paying it forward. I'm here, I'm looking for something, I need to connect. Networking is all about connecting. So who is this person? What do they need? What's their pitch? And then what's mine? And what am I going to tell them? How can they help me? Now let's talk about your markets. Where are you going to go? You know what you're looking for. You know how you're going to say it when you get there. And if you tend to be shy or a little withdrawn or a little nervous and you hate these big or small events and you don't like going up to strangers, getting that pitch down pat is really important so that it is so comfortable that it's just kind of like tying your shoe. Now where are you going to go? You need to think about where to go, what target market is going to match what you're looking for, and make that market work for you. As I mentioned before, Reid Hoffman and Chris Ye in their most recent book talk about network intelligence, reaching out not necessarily, but probably to the smartest people you know to get the message to the right person or market. Smart's good, but let's think more about what's really important, which is focused on who are the best people who are going to get the message out. Who are the ones, and why are they the best? They're the best because they understand you, they understand what you're looking for, and they can get you there. There is an example in Reid Hoffman's book about wanting to get to Arianna Huffington, a small company wanting to get to Arianna Huffington. And so the company got together, startups, and pulled together all of their collective Twitter followers and all of those following them. And they looked at which ones would be the closest for them to get to Arianna Huffington. And that's how they got there. So it's building that bridge slowly but surely so that your market will get you where you want to go. I'm going to digress for a moment. We're still talking about markets and where you want to go. I'd like to talk about roles because oftentimes it's true in earlier careers when you're early on, and it's also true for individuals working in large companies. Over time, we've kind of gotten confused about what these roles of these people are. We all have mentors and advisors and sponsors and advocates. We probably know some of them, and we probably know all of them do one or two things, but do you know who yours are? Make up the list of the top 10 people who are your go-to folks, and then think about what's missing and what could be optimized. In all of these categories, these individuals believe in you, trust you, and you believe in them. So when you get into your spandex and jump in a boat, you're going to go out and you're going to row together and you're going to win that race. Their roles, however, are a little different. And so as you're thinking about those top 10 go-to folks, and you can extend it to 20 or 30 if you want, your mentor is usually someone in your organization who's going to guide you through the unwritten rules and help you define your goals and will be a sounding board. The sponsor is someone who is usually in your organization as high up as you can go, who not only knows you and values you, but will open up doors for you and is going to champion you. Advocates will champion for you as well. Advocates may be what I would call evangelists. So they don't necessarily have to be in your organization. They can be people out there who know you, and anywhere they go, they are going to proverbially crow from the rooftops about how fabulous you are and how great you are and how it is, they're so excited that you want to go into the telco industry and change from where you currently are in enterprise software. And they're credible, right? They can't just be your mother. We love mothers. We respect mothers. It can't just be your mother. That's what sponsors and advocates and mentors do. Advisors tend to be individuals outside your organization who not only will provide you with trusted feedback, but they will be a mirror for you. So when they see you going a little off course, when they see that you aren't going as fast as you could, when they see you hitting the buoys on the race course and you need to get back straight and narrow, your advisors are going to say, you know, that's great. I really think you could even do better if you just stayed focused. So as you go back after you have cleaned up your address book, we agree, and looked at people, come up with that list, the top 10, the top 20. Put them into buckets. What are the holes? Where could you go to fill those holes? It can be challenging in a large organization when companies have mentoring programs or don't have mentoring programs, or are very large. So that as you think about it, you may have to think about how a stepping stone process, how, a little bit like what I described with Twitter, how am I going to get to the Arianna Huffington in my company? This is really important because this is going to give your networking structure, and it's also going to amplify your voice. You also want to think about function. So in your market, we all have people in these different categories. Once again, draw up your top 10 list. Look who's missing. Why is this important? It's important because they are going to help you get to your objective in complementary ways. The sage is a little bit like the evangelist or the advisor. The difference is that they really know where you're going really well, and they may know it from a functional perspective. You're in marketing, they are a marketing expert. They may know it just because they've been out there and doing stuff. They are also your champion and a go-to person. The industry expert is someone who knows your market better than anyone else and can open doors for you, and they can also tell you what doors aren't interesting. So if you're thinking that your next step or what you need or a new client for your company needs to be a startup and that's in the mobile app space, well, your industry expert could be a journalist, could be someone who works for AT&T, could be someone who's in the telecom council, someone who really knows that industry, who knows who's up and who's down, and say, you know, this whole area of mobile applications is going to die. Don't even waste your time. Over here, these 5 companies could be really interesting to you as potential clients because they have money and they're growing and they need your product or your skill. The tech guru is going to be that individual who really knows, gets down in the weeds, and really understands the technology. The marketing and brand visionary is someone who is going to be out there looking at the bigger picture. And Mommy Warbucks is a person who's going to open the doors to money. That's not so relevant when you're in a large corporation and want to stay in a large corporation, but boy, is that important when you're in a startup. So think about, as you're looking at your market, you've gone through your address book, now you're starting to formulate industries, and you're thinking about the roles that people can play to help you. Now think about their functions, and within the industry, which part of the market are they going to be able to help you with? Now you've got to get out of your comfort zone. We've mostly talked about what you have, building a strong foundation, organizing that foundation so that you can use it and maximize and optimize the network that you have. Now you've got to get outside. These are some thoughts on where to look. We often look outside, but we only look a couple of steps outside, and we forget about all the other places that we could be looking to make these contacts that become sometimes serendipitous. 1 degree of separation, 2 degrees of separation, that's what you're looking for. So you want to already have a connection. Don't walk into that room of 3,000 people and think that you're going to meet the dream company and the dream CEO right away. Might happen, but I wouldn't count on it. It's kind of like counting on winning the lottery. A little dangerous. And if you haven't bought the lottery ticket, the chances are even lower that you're not going to win the lottery. So here is another way to look at markets and then to map that against events and places and venues where you can then go. Affinity groups are groups where you share something. Could be a common background, could be a culture, could be a school, could be a parents group or a child's group. It could be an alumni group. It could be a group about women. If you're on this call today, my guess is the Women Leadership Conference is a really good place for you. This is an affinity group, and so thinking about how you can use it and where to look and what you want to get out of it is really important. Power and influence, those groups or places to look are usually the organizational mentors, the movers and shakers. This is about Arianna Huffington. This is about reaching for the moon. You may be saying, this woman is totally crazy, not to mention she's crazy at 9 o'clock in the morning. How could I ever get to somebody like Marissa Mayer, like Arianna Huffington? Well, think about that model again. You can get there. You're not going to get there just by sitting in the back of the room when those people speak to 3,000 people. But being in that room is the first step. And not forgetting that we should always be reaching for the moon and looking up. You never know what you can get from it. Groups that are around your knowledge and functionality. So here we're talking about looking and extending your professional sphere of influence. There's a piece around the knowledge. So those are, let's put that in an engineering bucket. Could be about functionality. So it could be around product management. It could be around social media. It could be around lawyers. So again, think of different types of groups and associations where these individuals meet. And then think big. What about your suppliers? In your company, you may have outsourcing companies. You may have printers. You may have lawyers. You may have raw material ads. You may have ad agencies. All of those places and suppliers could be sources of contacts and connections to where you want to go. And the last one is the free radical factor. So that's serendipity. Think out of the box. Networking is listening, not just broadcasting. Of course, time is of the essence. So you have to draw the limits. But don't be afraid to be friendly. Okay. You love basketball. You're going to the playoffs. People in that room, people in that Oracle arena love basketball. They love the Golden State Warriors, or maybe there are a few of them who hate them. So maybe somebody in line is a cool person who you just want to talk to. I'm not suggesting that you need to reach out to the other 20,000 people in a stadium. I am suggesting that you need to be open and take the blinders off and think about where you want to go. Be ready with your pitch and your brand. And it doesn't mean either that you have to bore everyone at your family breakfast table with this. It does mean that you shouldn't let go of serendipitous opportunities. But maybe something will happen very unexpected, and it could be an opportunity for you to pay it forward, for you to give back, for you to help somebody else, or it could be an opportunity for them to do the same. So we've structured and talked about your brand and who you are and where you want to go. You've cleaned up, and you will clean up your address book, and I'm going to be like, a very boring ad. If you didn't get the message the first time, I'll tell it to you 25 other times just to remember to clean up so you have a strong foundation. We've walked through the process of thinking about who the important people are in that address book and thinking about them in different ways, thinking about them in the roles that they play for you, whether they are sponsors or advocates or advisors, the type of advice and expertise they can give you because of their function. They could be your tech gurus. They could be your stages or marketing experts. They could be the way to get you money for your startup. And then we've walked through different places that you can look. And I would strongly encourage you to take some time when we finish, and then after the Women in Leadership Conference, to sit down for an hour I'm not counting time to clean up your address book. And walk through this exercise and make yourself be very focused, crisp, and clear on your message. I am in an enterprise software company, and I am passionate about mobile applications, and I want to go to a startup, and I want to be managing products in that startup. So I am going to look at all the people I know who know that I have this in me, and I'm going to tell them that because I've done blah, 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 I could be really good at this, and I'm going to get them to blast out to the universe, and now I'm going to go on meetup site, and I'm going to talk to my 3 friends in big telcos, and I'm going to talk to my 4 friends in the mobile app space, and I'm going to talk to the other person that I met once at a conference who's at Apple to understand how the App Store works. Oh, and look, I see there are another 4 meetups and events where everybody's meeting to talk about that. And then when I'm at that cool basketball game and Golden State's going to the championship, and I see a guy who's got a really cool phone and he's looking at an app that I think is interesting, I'm going to go up and talk to him. That's kind of how the pieces fit together. And so the 7 steps to success are all about implementing. Build it before you need it. So that's pretty obvious. Nothing happens overnight. You want to be building this now. Even if you needed it yesterday, that's okay. We can't go backwards in time yet. Maybe one day somebody will invent that, but we're not there yet. Take the time. This is not for fun. It can be fun, but this is serious business. Take control. Good impression management is good career management. Particularly if you're someone who's less comfortable reaching out of your comfort zone, it's really important to practice and craft that pitch so that it becomes natural, it's part of you, you know exactly what you want to ask, what your ask is, and then maybe you have a couple of alternatives if the person you're talking to isn't the one to ask a particular question of, but could help with another question. Maximize your impact. The sky's the limit. Take the floor. Don't be afraid. Take the floor, ask for the max. You'll get there. You'll be measured by your ambition. If you don't ask for it for yourself, nobody else will. Even if you have a few evangelists out there, only you are the one who's credible to do that. Keep track. Measure results against objectives. Follow up. Learning lessons are important. When you have talked to somebody and you've collected their card and you've said, wow, I'd be happy to connect you to my boss in enterprise software, and I'd love to hear more about your mobile app. 24 hours, maximum 48 hours. I'd also like to say there, because this question has come up at other times, well, if I write somebody and they don't answer me, what do I do? Don't take no for an answer. Don't take silence for an answer for at least a couple of times. Wait until they throw you off the virtual roof and say, okay, so they didn't answer the first time. I let a couple of days go by. Just wanted to follow up again because my email might have fallen into a spam trap. Still no answer. A week goes by. Now you need another reason to write them. It was so great meeting you and talking to you. I saw this article and I thought of you. It was really interesting. All right, if you still don't get an answer, then maybe you give up. Always keep in touch. And if you give up and the person never responds and isn't helpful, then they and their card, their business card, disappear from your system. If you meet them 2 years later and they're helpful to you, then they come back in. That's fine. Last but not least, make sure you get feedback. Talk to the people who have been your advocates, your advisors. How did I do? Did this sound right? What could I have done better? So in concluding, you know this well, you're ready to race. Let's get out there and let's just do it. You're building this for you, for everyone. Your success is our success. So just absorb all of that. I went really fast. I hope it's been helpful to you. Think about what you're going to do when you get off the phone, when you hang up on this connection on when you hang up in this webinar, and you've got the images of boats winning, and you've thought about where you're going to go. That's the end of my presentation. I'd like to thank you for your time. I think we may have some questions out there, David.
Thanks, Susan. Thanks, everybody, for participating today, and those that actually sent some questions through the chat. Susan, that was very, very informative, even for somebody like myself. Your presentation is gender neutral, if you will, and I'm an introvert at heart, so that was some very interesting tips and hints as to how to come out of my shell a little bit as well in some networking situations. So without further ado, I'll jump right into the questions. I'll go right down the line. Our first participant, Susan, asks, I'm early in my career, and I want to move into management at some point in the future. Who's most important, a mentor or a sponsor?
That's a great question. They're both important. If you're not sure, so they could be phased from mentor to sponsor. And I say phased because you want to be ready for a sponsor to be able to sell you, right? So if we think about the mentor, that's the person who is going to be a little bit of your mirror. It's going to say, you know, I don't think you're ready. Have you thought about spending another 6 months in this department or in this group? So finding that first mentor and that advisor, really, really important. If you feel that moving into management is going to be something that's a couple of years off as opposed to a year off, then the mentor is going to help you and the advisor is going to help you think about what skill sets you need to develop. The sponsor, when you're ready, is going to be the one who's going to blast it out, and when the big bosses are sitting at the table, they're going to say, oh, wow, you know, David would be really good for that. I know he hasn't been a manager before, but these are his qualities. Hope that helps.
Thanks, Susan. Got another great question through the chat. This one is very interesting. How can we use LinkedIn strategically to network? Or, you know, maybe we broaden that even and just talk about social media in general. Can you address that?
Absolutely. It's almost a second session. LinkedIn is critical. I would say that of all the social media, Twitter and LinkedIn are the most important. LinkedIn is almost like your source of all information. So when you go to events, you may want to not just look up the speakers, but you may also want to look up, if there's an attendee list, look up who's going. What are they interested in? If you're interested in mobile apps, or you're interested in enterprise software, let's say you're interested in customer satisfaction and you want to know what companies are really good, LinkedIn is a great base. And be sure that you connect with people, not just respond and follow up on any invitations, any opportunities when you talk to people, connect with them on LinkedIn. Twitter is a great tool for broadcasting and for listening. So seeing what's up, what's happening, connecting. I would have one word of caution with Twitter, and that is it's not because someone is following you that you want them to follow you. So you may like them following you. You may look at what they're doing and say, you know, I really don't want them as a follower, and under no circumstances automatically follow someone who follows you. There can be, there are voices out there in the virtual universe that actually follow people to do harm as opposed to doing good. And so be cautious and careful in what you do on Twitter. Doesn't mean not to tweet. It simply means that you want to be thoughtful about who you're following and who follows you. And it is a great way to get out there in messaging. The general consensus with Facebook is that it is usually for more personal connections and networks. We all know, you know, that it's probably not a great idea to have, recent pictures of drinking binges on Facebook. I don't think we need to go into more details on the fact that everybody can see everything. Whether you think they can or not, they can see everything. And then there are a lot of other ones that are used differently, and they're used differently by different age groups. So I think that Instagram and Snapchat and Pinterest are tools that are used generally by somewhat younger individuals. They're also great tools. They're less useful in this particular strategic networking mode. Just a few tips.
Yeah, Susan, those are all very good points. I might add as well to the portion on Twitter that you had mentioned with, meaningful connections or followers. I use the same principle when I'm on LinkedIn. I only really connect with people who I'm going to get value out of or who I know professionally, so that I know when it comes time to make a meaningful connection or outreach or a networking opportunity, lends itself to myself through LinkedIn, that the people that I'm actually connected with, I know either personally or professionally. Another great way that I actually network on LinkedIn, and we do this with some of the internal groups here at IEEE, is we have just that. We have groups set up. So if you are at an event or a conference and you're in a role or a capacity where you're able to create a group for a number of individuals to kind of privately network on LinkedIn or through other social media, I always encourage that as well. It allows for some more private discussions, if you will, for people who might not otherwise speak up, those like myself who might be a little more introverted or might want to anonymously participate in a group chat. I always find the LinkedIn group feature is a valuable one. So as not to take up any more time, I got more questions coming through chat, so I'll hit you with question number 3. Susan, my company has a mentoring program in place, but I want to choose my own mentor. Is that okay to do?
That's a great question. It is okay to do. It does need to be managed very diplomatically without offending anyone. One of the challenges in mentoring programs in large companies is that mentors self-select, and then the mentoring program usually matches. So the self-selection of mentors may or may not be the group that you're interested in. And if that is the case, then it's perfectly fine to have 2 mentors, or to have a mentor and a sponsor, or to have a mentor and an advocate. So it is very, very hard if you ask to be part of a corporate mentoring program to say no to a mentor that's chosen. What you will need to do is be respectful and accept that mentor, and then look for someone else as well.
So I got another question here from chat through the WebEx. It says that this person is shy and they hate big events, which I think a lot of people can relate to. Do you have any tips on how I can network in these awkward situations?
Yes. I'm not typically a shy person myself. That comes up very, very frequently. So if we go back to preparing and practicing and preparing your pitch, then you'll feel more comfortable, first off, with whatever you're going to say. That's really important. Another thing to do is to, when you're looking to run a marathon, don't start by saying, well, I think I'll go out and my first practice will be 20 miles, and then maybe I'll get up to 30 so I can go back to 26. Usually say, all right, I think I'm going to go buy shoes, then I'm going to get clothes, then maybe I'll just run around the block first. Networking is the same way. Start with events that are smaller and comfortable, where you have people you know, not people you know so well that you just hang out with your buddies. Big networking error. Look everybody up. Dig into their background so that you already feel like you know people before you walk in the room, and then give yourself 1 or 2 goals. Do I want to talk to this person? Do I want to talk to that person? Do I just want to learn? We often set ourselves up for terrifying failure because we think, oh, Ariana Huffington's speaking. I want to meet her, so that's a good thing to go to. And then you get in the room, and you feel like you're melting into the floor or the wallpaper because you can't get anywhere near her. Don't set yourself up for that as a goal. Don't set yourself up for failure. Think to yourself, I'm just going to hear her. That's absolutely fine. The other 3,000 people can all line up at the end, but I think I will die if I get in that line. Let me go out and find out what the other people in the room thought of it. Does anybody know her? Does anybody like her? What do they think? How could I get to her? Or maybe you'll find that those people are so interesting that you don't even need to go get her. So just set bite-sized pieces that are comfortable to you, and then gradually you'll build your comfort level.
Susan, that's great advice, and it kind of lends itself to the next question, which comes through from what sounds like a young professional, somebody fresh out of school. This is my first job. Where do I begin, or how do I learn to ask the right questions? This might be a little bit tied back to your advice on mentorship. So how would you address that?
That's another great question. Learning to ask the right questions is a little bit like learning a new language. So part of it is that learning experience, diving into a subject. So asking the right questions can be about a subject matter. They can be about a company. They can be about progression in a company, right? So different areas. First absorb, first listen before you broadcast. And then listen to the questions that other people ask and go to events about that topic so you can feel comfortable. And then start asking questions in places where you're safe. Don't go asking questions to the president of the company 30 days from now. That isn't going to feel very comfortable. And if it turns out to be a really silly question, then you're just going to feel awful and you'll go mute for the next 10 years. Bad idea. Thinking about places that you can go. Often in that situation, looking around you at people who are maybe a level above you, people who you admire and respect, not just because of what they do, but you feel they are comfortable to connect with and that they're outgoing. So finding those personal connections that are just a baby step up, and then understanding what they do. One of the things that's easy to do and people love it is just, as I say, baby step. You don't have to go to the CEO right away. Just go to someone who's just a little bit, who's been in the company for a lot longer and who's maybe one level up and say, I've just loved, I'm really loving being here at Google, Facebook, American Tire Distribution. And I'd just like to understand what your experience has been here. Could we go out for coffee? Would you mind having lunch with me? And just talk to me. Tell me what you did and how you got here and how you got to where you are. People never mind that. But make it safe. Make it easy. Don't make it so, right, oh, my God, I have to talk to, the senior whoopie-doopie vice president way up there. Start small. And look at the people. Look at their backgrounds on LinkedIn so you feel you have a connection point. When we talked about affinity groups, we talked about the importance of connecting. Find someone who also plays soccer at the end of the day, loves to watch movies, maybe went to your school, maybe had the same major, maybe came from the same state. Find a connection. Find a person who's in that comfort zone, baby step away, offer to take them out to lunch.
Susan, I have one more question, and then I'm going to let you take us out. This one's very interesting. Gentleman asks, I read a very interesting article online on Forbes.com about powerful strategic networking questions. Do you have examples of strategic networking questions that I can keep kind of in my back pocket in a social situation? So I guess they're looking for, Susan, almost some boilerplate or template type of questions that you can almost use in any networking situation, whether personal or professional. And then I will let you kind of wrap us up.
Sure. That's a good question. My initial response would be that I think customizing and personalizing is more meaningful. And so when we talk about branding and markets and messaging and not being so wide and vague, because in networking situations you may or may not have a lot of time. And so if you spend a lot of time talking about the universe and trying to solve the universe's problems, you never get to Susan and David. That being said, listening, going in the direction of either the individual or in a context. So as soon as you know something about the other person, that is an opportunity to make that connection. And so it's not a boilerplate, but it's close to a boilerplate. There's another, right, so if you know that that person went to a certain university, so if you're meeting them at an affinity group, so you know they play soccer because you're about to get on the field together. You know that they went to Johns Hopkins because you're at a Hopkins event. You know that they are an engineer because they're going to an IEEE event. That's really easy to have a boilerplate. Oh, so gosh, we're at the same place. So how'd you get into soccer, electrical engineering? What do you think of Hopkins, right? So taking whatever the circumstance is and then bringing it into a question that is around that person and what is it that brought them there is one way to do it. Another way is to connect the dots a little bit further. So you can take a passion and talk about, if you know what that individual's passion is, you can talk about that passion. It could be about startups. It could be about digital media. It could be about marketing. It requires homework. And so while you can take a situation and turn it into a question, how did you get here? What did you do? How'd you like it? You know, what year were you? See, we're at the same dog show. All of that is a boilerplate way to make a connection with somebody else. Sometimes it's just as easy to ask them what they do and why they're there that evening, and then use that as the springboard to get into it. That being said, it's so important for you to be ready with your own pitch and to know what it is that you want to say. Otherwise, you'll spend a lot of time, and in many networking situations, there isn't a lot of time. You just spend a lot of time drifting around and talking about subjects that are only tangentially of interest. So I think, David, we are running out of time. And with that, I'd like to thank everyone for their time. I'd suggest that as your first big networking exercise, you check out the other conference sessions on the website, IEEE-WIE-ILC.org. Hopefully you have that somewhere because that was pretty long to digest. I'd like to thank the organization, IEEE Women in Leadership, for giving me this opportunity. And I'd like to thank all of you for taking the time. I hope you have great success in your networking, and feel free to reach out to me if I can be helpful in any way. So, great day to everyone.